Okay, thank you for tuning in to this fireside chat with Mark on balancing between quality and speed, which is such an important topic in today's day and age where time to market is shrinking. But before I call Mark on stage, I'll quickly do an introduction to the test tribe and just let you know about a few things. So please confirm once you see my screen. Is my screen visible to all of you? Oh, not yet, just right. This is a new tool, so still getting a hang of it. Is it visible now? Well, thank you so much for the update. Quick, okay. Yeah, so thank you for tuning in to this fireside chat with Mark, who's the head of quality at Canva, and we're dealing today with the topic which is very important: the quality versus speed dilemma, strategies for high performance testing teams. And before I go ahead, I'd like to thank Stack, who are our annual sponsor for all our events and exclusive sponsor for all our premier sponsor for all our conferences. It's due to companies like Stack that we're able to do so many of such events regularly with consistency at scale. So yeah, thank you for that. About the Test Tribe is world's largest software testing community to net tech startup. We've started in 2018, about 7 years from now, and we have a simple mission. We want to give the testing craft the glory it deserves, and we want to co-create smarter, prouder, and more confident testers. We take pride in creating unique upskilling solutions and unique community solutions. And we do this upskilling and community through Discord servers, through webinars, sessions like these, physical meetups all over the world, courses, and our membership. We have a global footprint now. We're active in more than 25 cities all over the world. And we have a global footprint of about 120K plus testers. Yep. One interesting thing which we recently launched was the software testing salary report, India edition. So we collected a lot of data about from 1,000 plus testers from all over India and created a salary report. So if any of you are keen, just please feel free to have a look at this. My team will drop a link to this in the chat. You can join the community here and follow us on social media handles. About the speaker, Mark is the head of quality at Canva. Canva, we all know, is a behemoth of a company, such huge in size with so many pages, and it has revolutionized how graphic design, creative work is being looked at now. And he's a seasoned leader. He has a strong built-in background in strategic planning, team building, and cloud operations. He has led significant transformations at Canva and expanded the team from 8 to 50 engineers. Previously, he has held roles at Atlassian, the creator of Jira, focusing on SRE and cloud quality. And he has expertise in building high-performance teams, automating processes, and reducing tech debt. I think with that, let me just call Mark on stage. And let me just first stop my screen share. So Mark, can you hear me?
I hear you fine. Yes. Hello.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Let's just give a virtual applause. There is an emoji button here. Just do a welcome, virtual welcome by showing some claps or some chat to Mark. I think. Thank you, Ajay. Yeah. Thank you so much for this. Thank you, Varsha. Thank you, Mahesh. Yeah. So Mark, thank you so much for doing this. We're talking about a very interesting topic on balancing quality and speed and how to build high performance testing teams. Uh, Before I get into questions, Mark, while I did your intro, why don't you give a quick intro about yourself, something which I might have missed myself while introducing you, right?
Yeah. So first of all, hi everyone, and thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Looking forward to having a good chat. I guess I've had a long career across a number of different companies, and I think one of the things we're going to talk about today is that companies are different. Like, every company has its own priorities, its own context, its business goals, the way it works, the people that work for it, the values that are important. And I don't think there is a one size fits all approach. Like, there is a need for professionals to align with the business or what the business expects and what the business needs. And when it comes to my career, I have had very strong opinions about a lot of things. But some of those opinions in one company, I've then done a complete 180, a turnaround in the next company and had a completely different opinion. And I think that's it's quite strange to describe, but it's also very valid. Like, one thing that works in one place isn't necessarily going to work in another place.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, that's so valid, right? Because companies differ with size, companies differ with value systems, companies differ with market strategy, business strategy. So there's no one size fits all approach. Okay. So let's get straight into business, right? I talked about how did you build a team of, how did you increase the team size at Canva, right? At Canva, how did you manage the transition from a small QA team of 8 members to, let's say, a global high impact unit of about 50 members? And we know Canva, we do use Canva day in and day out. I just presented my slides on Canva, right? Before I call you on stage, right? So this is such a high impact organization. So what were the key steps of that transition, if I have to understand?
Right. So are we talking about my journey at Canva or how to grow, like the steps to grow a team?
Yeah, so let's say start from your journey and then possibly derive some pointers from how to do that.
Okay, so yeah, when I joined the company, as you say, the QA team was relatively small and to some extent directionless. Like the company wasn't really clear on why they needed QA or what QA was for, or even what good performance looked like from a QA engineer. So when I came in, my first step was to listen, to understand how the company worked and what was expected of me. So I did a listening tour of all of the people that I considered to be my stakeholders. So people that were in charge of product, people that were in charge of engineering, people that were in charge of particular parts of the business, and really just to understand what was important to them, what they thought quality was, what they thought QA did, and where we were doing well, but also, more importantly, where the gaps were. Like, what were they expecting that was not happening, or what would they like to see us deliver? So, just that exploration of the company was a critical first step to get my own understanding of the challenge that I was there to solve. The next step was we had existing QA engineers that had been there for a long time, so they knew the business better than I did. But to get to know them and to get to know how they were doing as well, I did a survey of the people. So for each QA engineer, the people they worked with, how is that QA adding value? Like, what are they doing that makes them a good employee? And what do you wish they were doing that they're not currently doing? So I understood both the business priorities and goals, and then also on an individual level, how each person was doing and what the strengths were and what the gaps were of the team as a whole. And then from that, I was able to deliver a strategy. So the strategy in some ways was very simple. It's like, you have told me that this is important, therefore this is what we will do. You have told me that this is where the gaps are. We will fill those gaps. We will deliver what you're asking for. So aligning that strategy with what was being asked by the stakeholders was the next step. And then obviously to execute on that strategy is the hard part. But a big part of those early days was just documentation of documenting why we existed. Like, what does it mean to be quality at Canva? What does it mean to work as a QA engineer, and put that in formalized terms? Like, this is the expectations of the role. This is what success looks like. This is the output that you need to deliver. And also principles. These are the principles that we believe are true. And getting us back to the topic, a lot of those principles were around quality and speed and sort of how to achieve both at the same time and not to compromise.
Understood. Oh, that's an interesting journey, and that's a very interesting process. And I hope people derive some inspiration from. And I hope people derive some inspiration from that journey of yours, right? So you ended this with speed and quality. So I now enter into the main segue here. I'll take a good segue into the main topic here, which is about speed and quality. So across organizations, across Atlassian, Canva, or a bunch of other organizations where you worked for, what were the most common challenges which you faced while you were trying to balance both quality and speed, right? Especially in fast-paced environments like Canva. Canva, I believe, is a fast-paced environment. So how do you balance between both of them? The first fundamental question which I have.
Yeah, okay. Um, the challenges. So, I mean, first of all, I think it's worth pausing a bit and talking about what we mean by speed and what we mean by quality. And I think everyone here is coming from a QA testing background. Like quality is probably well understood, like what good quality is, what bad quality is, what it looks like, and why it's important. But speed is maybe worth thinking about a bit more. So ultimately, we're probably talking about the speed of delivery of features. Like any business, any software business is delivering features to production for the end users. And the faster they can deliver those features, the more successful the company is in theory. And I think you mentioned this before, like, you can be outpaced by competitors if you're not delivering features and your competitors are delivering features. So speed of feature delivery is like the key business requirement. But we could also be talking about team velocity. So any dev team is probably tracking the tasks that they have to do, making estimates of how long those stories and tasks will take. And then the velocity of the team is, how many story points they get done a week, or, how many t-shirt sizes they can ship in a sprint, like, some measure of how fast the team is going. Then there's also the concept of the dev loop. So the dev loop is a developer team. A developer is writing code on their machine, and then they commit it into the code base, and then it goes through CI, it gets deployed to different environments, all of these things happen, maybe some testing happens, and eventually that change gets out to production and is in production. So that dev loop could be, in some companies, it can be months before that code change is seen by end users. In other companies, it might be hours or even minutes. So that dev loop is one concept of speed. And then a final concept of speed is how quickly a team can iterate. So one way of achieving quality is that you ship something and then you get feedback and you improve it, and then you ship a change and then you improve it and then you ship a change. So a team that has the ability to very quickly iterate, act on feedback, ship changes is going to lead to a better quality outcome than a team that is only able to ship change once every month or once every 6 months. So all of those different concepts of speed are important, and they all feed into each other. A team that has a small dev loop can iterate quickly. A team that can iterate quickly can have high velocity. A team that has high velocity can deliver features quicker. And ultimately, this is what success looks like, to balance the quality and speed considerations in a well-functioning way. So to get to the question, what are the challenges of doing that? I think the biggest challenge that I have faced is the people. There aren't really very many technical challenges. It's more getting people to understand what we're trying to achieve and what that looks like, and in some ways getting past skepticism or cynicism or people that are closed-minded maybe. I've worked with people that have a very traditional mindset, like, developers do this job and testers do this job, and developers cannot test and testers cannot code. And, ultimately that can lead to a lack of trust between developers and testers, and lack of trust can one of the consequences of a lack of trust is that testers want to test everything that developers are doing because they don't trust the developers. And then developers don't trust themselves because testers are telling them that they're creating bugs. So the developers slow down, and then the testers test everything, and then they find bugs, and then they test again, and the bugs need to be fixed. So it just leads to a high friction process that leads to the friction slows down all of those definitions of speed that I mentioned. So you end up with a team that is not capable of delivering quickly because they're doing too much testing. And it's not necessarily about maximizing quality, it's about minimizing trust. You don't have trust in your colleagues, so you want to double check everything that's going on. Whereas by contrast, a high performing team, you trust people to do the job that they say they do. And trust and verify is a good concept, but you do not need to double check everything. And I think that's the sort of key challenge to get past, the idea that testing is there to test everything.
That's a very interesting point. I think you're rooting this down into lack of trust across both the teams, because testers don't trust developers, so they want to test everything. Is it just the lack of trust, or is it also, if I have to point this down, some insecurity in our own heads as testers, that okay, that if something gets leaked to production, I might be blamed. So let me just do and test everything here, which probably is not needed uh, and reduces the velocity with which you want to operate. And if both of these are right, how do we enable motors? What are the starting points here, right? I
Yep.
work at a company where there's no trust, a very limited trust, right? Which is leading us to test everything, thus decreasing quality. So how do I start building that? How do I start solving this?
Right. So the first thing that stood out to me there is you describe two different teams. There's a team of developers doing one thing with one set of goals and a team of testers doing a different thing with a different set of goals. And I think fundamentally that is a broken model. What the solution is there's a single team with a single set of goals, a shared set of goals. And the goal of the team is to get features out to production as fast as possible. So testers should be working towards that goal. QA should be working towards that goal. Developers should be working towards that goal. Designers, PMs, like everyone is on a
Yeah.
single team, and the goals of the team are shared. So, if the goal of the team is to deliver a feature and everyone is happy that that feature is ready, go for it. If the goal of the team is to avoid every single bug and test everything 20 times just in case, then that's fine if that's the team goal. But that seems unlikely. Like most teams are going to be okay with some level of risk, but what level of risk is appropriate and how you decide that should be a team discussion and a shared decision, and everyone should be brought into that decision. So the consequence of that is that if something does go wrong, it's the tester's fault because they didn't find it. It's not the developer's fault because they wrote the code. It's not the PM's fault because they didn't write the requirement. It's a team failure, and the response to that failure is that the healthy team has a good practice of retrospection. So something went wrong, we led to an outcome that we weren't happy with. How can we fix it? What do we do differently next time? And maybe what we do differently next time is a huge layer of manual testing. Or maybe what we do differently next time is we invest more in automated testing. Or maybe the bug was inevitable, like we couldn't have realistically found it and that's okay. Or maybe monitoring in production, or all sorts of solutions. But again, the team considers the outcome that they delivered and takes responsibility for that outcome, and collectively changes processes or changes the approach to avoid similar outcomes in the future. So the concept of blameless retrospectives is key there. Like you're not trying to find a person to blame or a role to blame. You're looking at how you can improve as a team and doing that in a constructive, supportive, collaborative way.
And I got the keyword here, which you just mentioned, is blameless retrospective, right? That means collective ownership. And how do we begin that? How do teams begin to take collective ownership? Let's say we're in a common team, developers, designers, PMs, everybody's in a common team, infra, everybody's in a common team. We want to start taking ownership and want to start in the end, all of us are humans, right? All of us have individual goals. While we have collective goals, all of us are going to be appraised by the end of the year. So we have individual goals also. So how do we ensure that our collective goals always supersede our individual goals, and the blameless retrospective actually happens and goes beyond just a word?
Yeah. So first of all, I think the blameless retrospective is hard, but important. And one thing to do with something that's hard but important is to write it down, to say, this is what we're trying to achieve, this is our goal. And if we are not, if people are pointing fingers, if people are assigning blame, call it out. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to fix our processes. And a good starting assumption is that humans will make mistakes. Like, you're not going to fix a team by saying, this human, never make a mistake again, because that's not how things work. So anything that has gone wrong in production, it's not because a human made a mistake, it's because a process didn't exist that should have caught it. So starting with that assumption, you're not trying to find the person that caused it, you're trying to find a process that would have caught it. And again, that process might be a discussion in the early stages, it might be a test at the last minute, it could be something in between, but you discuss it as a team and try and identify what is the process that would have caught this mistake, because we will make mistakes again, and making mistakes is human and making mistakes is acceptable, but we want a process that is strong enough to protect us from the human-driven mistakes.
Got it. Understood. Understood, Martin. I'll take audience questions also, but I have this question right now, which was about okay. Yeah, this thing. Let's say we're talking about creating processes. Let's say reducing the blames on human by figuring out processes to it and seeing that if we could have a process which could capture this, right? Let's assume I work for a small team. This is not a very big team. This is a very small team where the resources are limited, not just human, but other resources are also limited. How do we ensure, again, collective ownership, blameless retrospective, and process-driven uh, structure in small teams with less resources?
To some extent, I don't think the size of the team matters too much. So the collective ownership is the important principle, and whether that's 3 people, whether that's 10 people, whether that's 20 people, like, you still have that concept of the team has a shared single goal to achieve, and every single person's role is to help achieve that goal. So you're not competing with each other, your roles are not in conflict with each other, you're not trying to chase after different goals. You have an agreed understanding of what success looks like, and each role is there because they play a part in building towards that success. So I don't know if that's answering the question, but I don't think a small team has a different challenge there. In some ways, a small team is easier because there's less people that need to align.
Got it. Understood. And in your experience, let's say, what role does automation play in all this, right? Because automation today is very important, and it's the buzzword, and most organizations are now moving towards more automation. So, what kind of role does automation play in this, and what automation strategies work for you? Let's say, if you can share some experience.
Sure. So automation is absolutely critical. Test automation, we're talking here. And one of the key takeaways for me, the reason we have test automation is because of speed. Speed is a requirement of the business, and having a strong CI system that runs a suite of tests and having confidence in your coverage means that you can go faster. And if you don't have that confidence, then you have to slow down and do lots more manual checks. So automation is more aligned with the speed concept than with the quality concept in many ways. So we have automation to give teams the confidence to move quickly. And the utopia to work towards is that if all of your builds are green, you press the button and ship to production, or the machine ships to production without anyone pressing a button. Like, you have that level of trust and confidence in your systems, in your processes, so that, you can, as I said, some companies make a change on a dev machine, it goes through CI and gets to production within minutes. And if you can do that, it's because you've spent a lot of time and energy and effort making your systems strong enough that you're confident that they are doing the right thing. So automation as an accelerator, automation as a way of giving teams confidence, automation as a enabler of extreme speed. So that is, I don't think you can get to a fast-paced software development environment without automation at all. So in terms of strategies, this is where it comes back to, like, every company is different. So a very mature company with poor coverage is going to have a very different challenge from a brand new company building a product from scratch. So there isn't really a sort of single strategy answer here. But I think two key takeaways are that automation shouldn't be seen as separate from feature development. You write a feature and you write the test coverage for that feature. And if you try to separate them, if you say we'll do feature delivery first and then we'll write the automation as phase 2, or if you say team 1 is going to write the feature code and team 2 is going to write the automated test code, anytime you try and do that separation, you're adding friction to the process and ultimately making it more difficult. So having that clear definition of done, the developer has a job, and the job is to write feature code and write the test that proves that the feature is working as you expect it to. And so having that definition of done is one takeaway. The other one is that shifting left. So when I talked about the dev loop before, sort of when you do the testing and how the testing is done is important. If you're doing the testing at the end of the dev loop, then anything that goes wrong, it's going to take a long time to investigate the problem, figure out what went wrong, figure out which component is causing it, figure out which developer owns that component, figure out which code change caused it. Like, it's all a big time sink. So if you can move that discovery backwards through the process by shifting left. So ultimately, most of your testing should be done at the unit test level. So functional testing functions for correctness should always be done by unit tests. And the advantage of a unit test is that if it fails on the developer machine while they're writing the code. They get that instant feedback and they can fix it. And there's almost no time lost. And then on top of that, you have integration tests and component tests and end-to-end tests and tests running in production. So all of those are valid and necessary. But if all of your testing is done at the end of the process, it takes too long, it's too slow, it's adding friction. So whenever you're adding a new test, could the test be running earlier? Could the test be running at a lower level? Could you be getting that feedback to the developer faster? I think these are key questions that anyone in a quality role should be capable of answering.
Got it. Understood. Understood. Let's take some audience questions now, Mark. There is this question from Ajay. I'll show this here on stream. This question is can you share your views on quality assistance replacing quality assurance? What do you think on this?
Yeah, I think this is a good question. To some extent, naming is unimportant. Like, it's more what you do is important rather than what you call it. But names do have meaning. Names are important, and names sort of set the scene for what we're trying to achieve. So quality assurance, there's an implication there that you are adding an assurance. Like assurance, the word, it means that you are guaranteeing that something is correct, guaranteeing that it is bug-free, guaranteeing that it's high quality. And that's really hard to do because you are not the one writing the code. You are not the one shipping the feature. You cannot guarantee that it is bug-free. And even doing like rounds and rounds, days and days, weeks and weeks of testing, you never get to the point where, with any complexity of code, you never get to the point where it's like, yep, it's absolutely guaranteed to work in all situations for all people all of the time. So I think assurance gives a false promise, a false confidence that we don't really believe in. By describing our role as quality assistants, it adds support to the idea that I described, like we're working as a team and our role is to support the team to achieve the team goals. So you are assisting that team to identify what quality means, to achieve that quality and to follow the steps to get there. And I think one of the most impossible things to do in software development is to inject quality at the end. You cannot sort of take a bad product and do some magic and make it into a good product. Quality needs to be built in from the start and throughout. So think about quality when you're doing exploration. Think about quality when you're writing requirements. Think about quality when you're doing design. Think about quality when you're writing code. Think about quality when you're thinking of how to deploy the code. Think about quality when you're designing what the user onboarding journey looks like. Like quality, to achieve quality, it needs to be a team-wide concept that is well understood and people care about it. And if you have a team of people that do not care about quality, then having a quality assurance step at the end of it is not going to be a solution. So quality assistance is intended to illustrate that idea that, your role is to infuse quality throughout the team, not to add it at the end if no one cares about it.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, Mark. Now, how do we handle people burnouts, right? Because when we're chasing both quality and speed, both of them are hard targets, right? You don't get quality without putting in hours of work, putting in efforts, designing process. And again, speed requires agility. It requires constant thinking, constant working, right? Both of them are hard targets. So how do we as leaders, right? As a leader, how do you ensure people burnout is solved while you chase both these very hard targets?
Yeah, burnout is definitely a concern, an interesting topic to raise. I think one of the points I'd like to make is that when we're talking about operating at high speed, it doesn't mean that every single individual is working at 100% all of the time and, delivering constantly. What we're talking about is the team operating in a healthy way. The team is capable of delivering consistently over time. And any individual maybe they're having a bad week, maybe they're away sick, maybe they're having a baby, maybe they're, on a honeymoon, maybe they're, there's all sorts of things that can be happening to an individual on the team. But if the team is strong and has good processes to follow, then one person being absent or not 100% present isn't really a concern. And if you believe that your role on the team is so important that everything falls apart when you're not there, that is not a good position to be in. It's not a safe position to be in. And that's what leads to burnout, the idea that the team cannot manage without you. So I think this applies for any individual working in a software company, but for QA in particular, having the trust in your team that I can go on holiday for 2 weeks and I can come back and things will still be working well. The team will still be following the processes that I've defined. The quality will still be high. That gives you the freedom to step away from work, to focus on your holiday, to focus on your honeymoon, to focus on your personal life. So the team is healthy, the team is operating at speed. We're not asking every individual on the team to operate at speed. Burnout is a risk for individuals that push themselves too far, but often that pressure is coming from themselves. It's not coming from the manager, it's not coming from the team. And as a manager, it's worth listening to your people. Like if someone is working too hard, if someone is working over hours, if someone is working weekends, that's something to be aware of and try and put a stop to it. But it shouldn't be expected. It's not part of the definition of success. And you don't need people to be working overtime to have a high functioning, high velocity team.
Got it. Got it. We talked about processes and systems in place, right? Mark, from your experience, some of the key processes which you think teams and organizations should follow, but they don't follow eventually. But because of some reason, because then they don't know those processes, but they or they don't have the infra for this. What are some of the key processes which you would like to share from your experience, which people might not be knowing or which might be unique to your area of work or your work experience?
Okay. So with the disclaimer that, again, every company is different, every context is different, and aligning with the business is the first step. But I think in a quality role, there are three key focus areas that are probably going to be relevant. So the first one is that you're working with developers that are building, and the quality challenge is how do you build new features that meet the requirements, that are bug-free, that are going to be popular with the end users? How do you build and ship those features? The second responsibility is regressions. So code is going to production on a regular basis. Every code change, every config change, every change that's made in production carries the risk that something will break. So how do you have confidence that you can make changes as fast as possible and nothing will break? And then the third thing is metrics and user feedback. So whatever's going on in production is not a static state. We are constantly delivering change. Users are coming, users are going, the world is changing, things are different this year than next year. So how things are looking in production. In an ideal team, you have solid metrics and observability that tells you how things are going in production. And then that gives you the flexibility as a team to focus on problems when they exist, or focus on speed and team health when things are healthy. So to recap, shipping new features with quality, preventing regressions, and building a user feedback loop so that dev teams respond to what's going on in production. I think that at a high level, they are the three things that I would focus on as a high performing QA team.
And that makes sense. I think the one which you said, like the user feedback loop is very important, because as QAs or as developers, we end up getting that feedback, and then we work in our own shells, our own silos, right? We don't get to see what the world wants, right? So I'll take an audience question right now. This is from Natasha. She's asking for a very fundamental question, right? What skills should I focus to become a key contributor to a high performing team, which could be both tech and non-tech from your understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many different paths to success. As you say, you might be going down the technical route and becoming someone that is capable of building test frameworks and, building tools that manage quality without human involvement, which is a great career direction. Or you might be going in the process direction, where you are really skilled at defining processes and getting people to follow those processes, and processes leading to good results. So there isn't one true path to success. And I think the most important guideline for a successful career, and this is referring back to something I said at the very start, is to understand who your stakeholders are and really engage with them, understand what they need, what's important to them, and how you can help them to succeed. So if your stakeholders are telling you that they want more speed, they want developers to go more quickly, and you are saying, but quality, we need to do more testing, that's where the tension comes from. That I think is the bigger for some of these questions. Whereas if your stakeholders are really prioritizing speed, your goal is how can we go as quickly as possible. If your stakeholders are prioritizing quality, if you've got a buggy product and they want you to fix it, then sure, you introduce new testing stages, find ways of improving quality. But the QA does not exist in a vacuum. QA is paid by the business because the business believes there is a problem to be solved or an opportunity to realize. So whether it's your manager, whether it's you as an employee, whether it's a company direction, whether it's a defined goal, whether it's an ambiguous principle, the important concept is to understand what people expect you to do. And the best way of understanding that is just to ask them. Ask people what they expect, deliver what they expect. That is what success means.
Understood. No, that makes a lot of sense, right? And that is so valid, right? Because I sincerely hope that more people understand that their success lies stakeholders.
Sorry, I'm not hearing you at the moment. Like either it's frozen on my end or your end. Okay, so I'll keep talking maybe while he's gone. So I think alignment with stakeholders is a key point that I try and, as a manager, this is what I try and communicate to people that work for me. Sort of, what I think doesn't matter, what you think doesn't matter. It matters to an extent, but in terms of success in your role, in terms of value to the business, it's about understanding stakeholder needs and managing your stakeholders effectively. And again, like the secret sauce, the sort of secret recipe for how to be a successful software engineer is to align with that business value and show that you can deliver that business value. So what you think about testing, what you think about dev speed isn't really important. It's how you can serve the needs of the business, serve the needs of the people that are giving you the money to be an employee. I can look at the Q&A maybe. Okay, so one of the questions that I can see from an anonymous user is what paths are there for a techno-functional QA manager after 15 years in IT industry?
Hey
You're
everyone.
back.
Yeah,
Hello.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. Yeah, the internet is a bit conky here. It's still a bit magical. Just trying to figure out.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
So
I just kept talking. It was fine.
yeah. So this is a question from somebody who doesn't want to be named, right? He's asking what paths do you see for a techno-functional QA manager after 15 years in the industry?
Okay. I'm not sure what techno-functional means. It's not a term I'm familiar with.
Yeah, so it's people plus technical both kind of role. Somebody who does both people management and tech both.
Right. So someone that's sort of on the tools as well as a people manager.
Correct. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, the path then is, to some extent, if you're doing that combined role, you can be successful, but it's always going to be a bit of a compromise. Like, you're not going to be a great manager because you're not doing it as a full-time job. You're not going to be the most technically competent person because you're spending time worrying about management issues. So I think a combined role like that can be a good role to be in to help you decide. But the stage beyond that probably requires you to pick a direction, to pick a lane. So if you're really good at the management side of things, if you enjoy having one-on-ones, if you enjoy focusing on people's growth, if you enjoy indirect impact through others, then leaning into that and becoming a more focused manager. So giving up the technical side of the role and empowering technical people to do a good job is one path. But the other path is, like, not everyone enjoys that. Some people really enjoy the technical side of the role. And, to be a technical expert takes time, it takes commitment, it takes hours of learning, as we know. So if you want to be more skilled on the tools that you need to use, and if you want to learn about new tools, And especially in the new world where AI is becoming more and more important, having the time to understand how to be successful with those new tools, all the time you're spending doing one-on-ones and doing management conversations is a distraction from that. So I don't think you have to choose necessarily, but if you're struggling to get to the next stage in your career, it might be just a matter of making that choice and making it cleanly.
Quite true. This is a question from Suresh, who's asking, what is your advice about how to improve the accountability in your team?
So that's a difficult question to start with, because accountability for what? Like, what are we talking about here? And then also, what is the team? So, it kind of goes back, I think, to the conversation we had about team level accountability for things that go wrong in production. Like, you're not blaming an individual, you're getting the team to reflect on what went wrong and what can be done about it. So if that's my interpretation of the question, then retrospectives are going to be the best tool. And doing a retrospective only when things go wrong is a bit of an anti-pattern. You should do a retrospective on a regular basis, and it's a chance to celebrate what's going well as what's going wrong. So if everything went really well, like, maybe you shipped everything on target, maybe there were no critical bugs, maybe you did everything faster than expected. Like, why did that happen? How did that happen? What were you doing correctly? And can we do it more often? Can we recreate those circumstances? And if things are going wrong, if you were slower than expected, if you did ship a critical bug, then let's talk about that. Let's talk about what went wrong. And just having that culture where it's normal to talk about these things, it's expected that you talk about these things, is a way of driving accountability. And I think as a manager especially, the worst case scenario is when everyone knows that something is going wrong, but nobody will speak up, nobody will tell you. Because as a manager, you're fairly separated from what's actually happening. So if you have a high level of trust as a team and an environment where, someone's saying, I think this is a risk, I think this is something that, we could do better, I think this is something where we do a bad job, that's a great culture. That's what you want to happen. That's the discussion you want to have. Whereas if you sort of ask how things are and everyone tells you everything's fine, and then you don't discover that something is wrong until it turns into a disaster, then that's when you have a problem. So building a high trust culture, respecting everyone on the team, and rewarding people that speak up, rewarding people that flag problems, and encouraging frank and open discussions about how to make the team better rather than talking about individuals and individual performance.
And let's take the last question for today. And this is something which is being very popular these days, is how do you think AI is going to change testing? And because we're talking a lot, every second session today is on how AI is going to impact testing, how to test LLMs, how to use RAG, how to use prompt engineering, and how much of it is now being used in Canva is what people are interested to know. So both parts, two parts of the question.
So, AI is the huge topic of the day and probably deserves its own separate session in some ways. Sure. First of all, AI is incredibly powerful as a tool. And as people in the software engineering industry, a large part of our job is understanding what tools exist and how to use them to achieve goals. So AI is not going to replace engineers. It's not going to replace humans. It's going to be a tool that engineers use to do their jobs better, to do their jobs faster, to do their jobs with more efficiency, with more accuracy. So to take a random example, one way of adding value as a QA is to do bug pattern analysis. You take 100 bugs, you look at the patterns, you identify some themes, you make recommendations to your team about how to avoid those bugs in the future. That's something that is important, but quite time consuming. in an ideal world, you can get AI to do the analysis and tell you what the themes are. And then you still like take that forward to your team and say, this is what we've learned and this is what we should do differently. But you've taken away a lot of the effort to get there. You're still driving the same outcome. You're still driving the same discussion from the same data set, but you're doing it a lot faster. Another advantage AI gives you is that instead of analyzing 100 bugs, there's no reason why you couldn't do 1,000 or 10,000. There's practically no limits because the AI is doing the boring work, the sort of repetitive work, and then you're exercising the human judgment based on that. So that's one example of how AI can help you to do the job of a QA. And then similarly, like writing code, writing test code, generating tests, these are all things that AI will be doing in the future. And a successful person over the next 20, 30 years is probably going to be someone that understands how to use AI to deliver those results. So learning some techniques and becoming familiar with AI tools is almost certainly a good career move at this point.
100%.
I think the more interesting half of the question though is testing AI-driven features, because that is to some extent, I've worked in software for a long time, and every company is different, and every team is different, and every challenge is different. But it is kind of all the same. You're doing the same thing over and over again, just building different features for different people. I think AI is the first. Actually, no, cloud was similar. Cloud was something that came along that sort of upended the way I thought about the world, the way that I operated my job, the way to be successful. So cloud was the first big transformation in my career. But AI, I think, is shaping up to be the second one and potentially even bigger. So building a feature that does something is a solved problem at this point. But building an LLM that generates content that you deliver to the end user, you cannot test that in some ways. You cannot test every single input and every single output for an LLM. It's just not even feasible. So what does it mean to deliver a high quality LLM? What does it mean to deliver an AI feature that people will enjoy using? What are the risks? What are the edge cases? What does success look like in this new world? So I think that's the very interesting discussion. And I know we've only got a couple of minutes, so I will leave it as a sort of open-ended question. But I think a lot of the exciting work that is happening right now in Canva is exploring these questions. And we don't have all of the answers yet, but we are building up a body of knowledge of what it means to be high quality when it comes to AI.
That is so true, right, Mark? Because as a community builder, I get to talk to a lot of testers, and I tell them that testing AI is not going to be same as testing a web app or testing a mobile-based application. It's going to be a lot different because the models are so different, and each model, if you give it an input, it might give two different outputs at two different times, both of them being right. Both of them are right. It's not a web app where you give one input and it gives you one output. It can give you multiple outputs, both of them being right, 10 of them being right, but it's going to be very different. And there needs to be a lot more conversations happening around how do we test the AI itself in the long term, and which is going to become such an important skill in the next 1 or 2 years with AI getting more adoption, right? So that's the skill, right?
Yeah, I just to sort of think about the wording of that, I don't think the question is how do we test AI, because you can't. I think the question more precisely is how can we make sure that the quality of the AI feature is high? How do we make sure how do we make sure the feature is delivering what users want it to deliver? And how do we make sure we're avoiding the obvious risks and the not so obvious risks? So testing is maybe not the answer, but focusing on quality and it's a new definition of quality when it comes to these things.
Correct. Got it. So thank you, Mark, so much. Thank you so much, Mark, for doing this. I know it's late for you. And thank you to all the people who tuned in for this one. This is right middle of their work days. in Europe and India. So they took some time out of their work and attended this. Thank you all of you for doing this. I'm just putting a feedback form here on chat. So please feel free to fill the feedback form. I would share this with Mark also, and I'll share it with my team also for us to improve further. With that, let's just end this here. And thank you so much, Mark, again for doing this. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. We hope we could just do justice to your time which you gave during your work hours, and you had some good takeaways from this session. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me, everyone, and see you around.